Hi, I'm John Hallis from Dauntless Endeavors. I've owned this Smith & Wesson M&P 22 compact chambered in 22 long rifle for about 5 years now, and I figure it's time to do a long-term review on it. This pistol is unloaded. The short version is I have fired this gun about 1,500 rounds. It has been absolutely 100% reliable with one little hiccup that I discovered right out of the gate. And accuracy-wise, at 50 feet, 10 round groups off a bench, I don't have any tabulated data, but it shoots 2 to 2.5 inch groups off a bench at 50 feet all day long. If that's all you're looking for, you could probably stop watching right now. However, I do want to point out a couple issues that I had with it and show you a couple modifications I've made. The first problem I had, the first problem I discovered with this gun, it was the very first magazine I fired. I shot just a couple rounds and all of a sudden I came up with an empty chamber. And I realized that the magazine had dropped down. And after I examined it, I realized that if I can push this magazine up into the frame, and it won't catch until I push it all the way up and then slide it forward. Did you hear that click? I'll try it one more time here. And now it won't come out. And also notice there is virtually zero amount of vertical play when it is latched. It's nice and tight. I'm going to switch this magazine catch around to the left side, and I'll show you what it looks like then. And by the way, one of the nice features of this gun is that it is fairly ambidextrous. It has ambidextrous thumb safeties, and it has an ambidextrous magazine release, so you can take it and switch from left to right-handed. And so I already showed you how tight it was with the right-handed, and I just did a quick switcheroo to the left-hand operation. And now, with it in there, it easily catches every time. But I have a little bit of play, maybe 20 thousandths of play there. And I thought, okay, what that indicates to me is that there is a metal locking tab that is molded into this magazine release, and it is not perfectly centered. It's a little bit high, so that when it's in the right-hand mode, it's a little too tight, and when it's in the left-hand mode, it's a little too loose. The frustrating part for me was that I got a brand new gun, the magazine keeps falling out, and so I called up Smith & Wesson's customer service and said, hey, can I buy one of these? And they said, oh no, you need to send the gun in. And I'm like, I'm not gonna send a gun in for a stupid magazine release, which the manual says I can change out back and forth myself. So I held off for a couple of years and thought I'll just deal with it. And a couple of years went by and I thought, it's still kind of frustrating. So I contacted Smith & Wesson again and said, can I buy one of these? Oh, sure, you can buy one of these. Yeah, I said, okay, well, let me order one. And they said, well, they're out of stock. So after that, I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna deal with it. After my frustrating experience with Smith's customer service, who normally they are outstanding, by the way, I just didn't want to send this brand new gun back in for a part that I could change out by myself. If I could have purchased one from Brownells or Midway USA, I just would have and been done with it. My solution is just to all right, just train myself. Every time I insert this magazine, bring it up, push it forward, make sure it's locked, and it works perfect. So I've just trained myself, works perfect, except when I forget. And therein lies a lesson that if there is something about your firearm or any mechanical device that has a malfunction and you have the means to remedy that so that you don't depend on yourself to always get it right and always remember, fix it. Enough said about that. So my little reminder, I was shooting here earlier this winter, and a couple times, sure enough, I forgot to slide the base of the magazine forward. It didn't latch fully, and sure enough, I came up with an empty chamber. So I am going to contact Smith and see if they will sell me a new magazine release and be done with it. All right, it's confession time. While taking pictures for this video, I was trying to get a close-up of that metal insert in the plastic magazine catch, and looking at it real close, I realized that little metal tab was slightly bent. So I got the great idea to stick it in my vise and see if I couldn't tweak it back straight again. And what do you know, it works perfectly now. I'm going to get a close-up here. Just a little bit of tweaking and it locks up perfectly every time. I don't have to slide the magazine forward. Everything's good. I didn't have to buy a new magazine catch. I didn't have to send it back into Smith & Wesson. I only wished I'd realized this 5 years ago when I first got the dang gun. The factory front sight was a little bit too tall and too wide for my preference. Too tall required me to adjust the rear sight higher than I wanted, and it looked kind of funny. And too wide prohibited a good sight picture because I couldn't discern any kind of a gap between the notch in the rear sight and the front sight. So I remedied both of those problems with a new sight from Dawson Precision. It's about 50 thousandths shorter and 25 thousandths narrower, and it fits perfect. I'm also becoming a big fan of the fiber optic insert on the front sight. Plain black sights, and even black sights with white dots on them, are really at their best in ideal light conditions when shooting at bright targets. Not so much in poor light conditions or when shooting at darker targets. And those are the times when the fiber optic really comes into its own. Another thing you may have noticed is that I have a shiny thread protector on the end of the barrel. I made an oversized thread protector. It's about 4 thousandths larger than the original equipment manufacturer. And with the idea of just let's tighten up some of the tolerance between that and the slide, and so there's not so much play there. Did it make any difference? Probably not, but it makes me feel better. Other things I've noticed about this gun are that the trigger guard is a little bit small, and you know, I have large hands, but not overly large hands, and there's just enough room for me to get my finger in there. But some people find it a little snug. And also the distance between the trigger guard here and the bottom of the frame with this little curve right here cramps my hands ever so slightly, and the pinky, it's just, everything about it is a little bit small and a little bit tight for me as I fired this gun. I don't mind it, but I've been testing another gun that's slightly better, and I find that going from one gun to the other, sort of like getting out of a little Toyota Prius and crawling into, you know, a full-size car, and my hand goes, ah, it just feels better. This one is a little snug for me. There are little spring pins, roll pins, right here and here and down here, and they have a tendency to walk or drift on me as I fired it, and I'll notice, oh, it's sticking out 1/16 of an inch, and I need to tap it back in. It shouldn't do that. I wished it didn't do it, but as long as you watch it and just drive them back in, you know, it's not a problem. It's just more of something I'm pointing out for you to be aware of. The last thing I want to talk about are the safeties. I'm going to strip this gun apart and show you something inside, and then we'll put it back and we'll talk about the safeties. All right, I pulled the slide off, stripped it down, and I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to block the hammer so that it doesn't just flop forward. And the only reason I'm doing this is just to point out that it is a hammer-fired gun, not a striker-fired gun. Just because a pistol has a concealed hammer doesn't mean, and you should never assume that therefore it must be a striker-fired gun. Let me put this back together again quick. I have read people's opinions on some of online where they'll make a bold statement such as, No gun like this should ever have thumb safeties. And I think those statements, I'm just guessing that those statements are coming from the era of the striker-fired generation. And a true striker-fired gun, like a Glock, every time it cycles, the lock work mechanism is essentially half energized, not fully energized. This gun is a single action hammer fired gun, and every time you fire, the slide cycles back and recocks it, and when it returns to battery, it is fully cocked, the lock work mechanism is fully energized, and it is ready to fire. And it's that fully cocked mode that I think this gun absolutely should have a safety on it. We can draw an analogy to a Remington 870 pump shotgun. Every time you pump it back and forth, that hammer, even though you can't see it in the gun, it is fully cocked. And so you would never carry that gun around hunting with the safety off. An AR-15 hammer fired gun, you'd never carry that thing around with the safety off. And why would you do that with a pistol like this? And granted, people, oh, it's got the little trigger safety built in. Well, redundancy is a good thing, but when people make that kind of a statement, I'll make a bold statement of my own. You don't know what you're talking about, and you couldn't be more wrong. So, a single action, hammer fired gun absolutely should have a safety on it. That's my stance, and I'm sticking to it. If you're looking for a absolute reliable, fun, compact, blinking .22 pistol, this one really hits the mark, and as long as it fits your hand, I think you'll be very, very happy with this Smith & Wesson M&P .22 compact chambered at .22 long rifle. The name is bigger than the gun. I'm John Hallis from Dauntless Endeavors. Have a great day and be safe.